Alright, I just watched Captain America Brave New World, and I have some thoughts. Listen, I'm going to try not to spoil the movie. I'm actually going to do a spoiler-full video where I just talk about all the stuff that either I don't understand or things from the end of the movie that I want to say extra nice things about, but I don't want to spoil. Either way, this is going to be as spoiler-free of one of these reviews as you can get from the perspective of someone who's seen at least one of the trailers, because there are certain things about this movie, especially the marketing, that I don't think would surprise most people. Here's what I'll say. If you walk by like a standee or a poster, that's the amount of information I feel like most people have going into this. It's the same way, like before I went to see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I asked my girlfriend, who wasn't super in the know on this, like, hey, have you seen anything about this movie? Do you know who's in it? And she was like, not really, I haven't seen too many commercials. But then when we got into the actual theater, on the screen before the movie started was a big poster that had all the stuff, all the guys from the movie, including Scarlet Witch. And I was like, it would have been a fun surprise. So let's say, like, I don't know, Red Hulk's in this movie, and other actors who they announced, 3 or 4 years ago are also in this movie. But I'll try to be kind of vague on that. All right, whatever, here we go. The movie's fine. It's fine. It's a very fine movie. It's going to take the crown from, I don't know, Ant-Man and the Wasp, or Thor 2 in like world's okayest Marvel movie. I think this movie, first of all, it's not like great. I'd say like Guardians 3, in terms of recent ones, is great. I think Quantumania, in terms of recent ones, is like not good. I don't think this is worse than Quantumania, and I definitely don't think it's better than Guardians 3. It's like right around where The Marvels was, and I definitely don't think I enjoyed it more than Deadpool and Wolverine. But that is to say, like, the bar for these movies is somewhat high, considering that this is a movie has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it is widely looked upon as a huge failure, where something like Venom 3 comes out with a similar score, and people go, not bad, okay, alright, Venom. Getting that Morbius stink off of us. Like, that's just the vibe that I get from the way people talk about these movies. But I'm not going to pretend that this movie deserves an Oscar or something. I will say, the amount I know about this movie, in terms of just like things that were reshot, characters that were added, characters that were taken away, plot points that seem to have been added later in the game, I'm honestly kind of impressed until the very end with how cohesive it feels. I do think there's things near the end, both in terms of visuals and in terms of just like the plot kind of needing to come together, that feel not quite as thought out. But a lot of that stuff in the beginning, like, I think flowed pretty naturally. There were plenty of things that I didn't like or didn't fully get, but considering it's a movie that I knew was reshot many times, it didn't feel much more like it than something like The Marvels, for instance. Like I said, until the end, when it does get kind of screwy. The overall story for this, which I'm not going to get too much into, but there is a new metal that was created during the events of the Eternals, where the Celestial got turned into a big island or mountain or whatever. Turns out that metal is very valuable, so the different countries of the world are fighting over it, and that includes America, Japan, and a couple of others. America and Japan are the big ones. Thaddeus Ross, usually played by William Hurt, who is now dead, so instead it is Harrison Ford. He has been recently elected President of the United States, so he's overseeing this whole thing with the Celestial Island and the valuable new element. But as the conspiracy unfolds that threatens to destroy this relationship that General Ross, President Ross, is trying to build, Captain America, now Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie, and his buddies have to work together to try to figure out who's doing what and stop it before it starts a war. I actually think that there are stakes in this movie that are more personal and feel more interesting. I understand why the plot goes where it goes, but like, there is another thing going on that Sam is trying to do throughout the movie that you do feel more attached to, and it does give you a sense of urgency. Whether or not that is earned is another story. While this very nebulous, like, oh, there's going to be World War III and everybody's going to fight everybody, I'm like, I don't know if they'll do that. But like, I could see a world where this other consequence happens, and that is something that like I feel for. I think the emotion of the movie hooked me onto that plot line. Every time a character said, this is actually why we're doing this, I was like, oh, right, yeah, we should do that. But anyway, okay. So let's say the direction and stuff is fine. Again, it's not amazing, but like it looks okay. It looks about as good as the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show. Like, it's a couple of action scenes, all of which have been in all of the trailers. There's very little in this movie I think that will surprise you. And honestly, like, if you've seen the trailers and you're like, I kind of can figure out where things happen, but like, why do things happen? Because, that's all you need. Just because there's a character who wants them to happen, and that's why they do. It doesn't make very much sense, but you know, we're kind of going with it. You know what I've compared it to? It feels like a Fast and the Furious movie, or like a Bad Boys movie, where you're like, why are they even doing this? And it's like, oh, right, because they solve all their problems with driving, so the bad guy's stealing a tank, that's where the ship just happens to be. You know, like, that's kind of this. Like, right, why are we having a big battle with jets? Right, because the superheroes could fly with their wings, so that's where it would be cool to have a fight scene. I think overall, the action was good when it was doing the things that it's good at. I was really impressed with some of the flying scenes. I think the fight scene with the Red Hulk was cool. I think all of the hand-to-hand stuff was fine. None of it was incredible. Some of it was like kind of impressive, but it also didn't feel that interesting, because this is not a character that I think should be amazing at all of that stuff. I guess what I mean is, I'm not saying this movie loses track of what is interesting about Sam Wilson, because I think the movie does a couple of times go, what are you? Like, what's your deal? Why are you you and not the other guy? Besides the wings and stuff, like, what makes you a worthy successor to Steve Rogers? And also, like, why are you gonna be the guy that we're gonna send in here to fight all these other guys? And like, I guess what it never felt like to me with the Falcon was he's the greatest martial artist that ever lived, and he can do all kinds of cool funky backflips and stuff to fight a bunch of guys. Like, I think what I liked about the Falcon originally is he was kind of scrappier, and he obviously had a superhero-y gimmick that was very handy in certain situations, but not all situations. Falcon and the Winter Soldier feels like it positioned him as more of a hand-to-hand fighter and tried to use like his Falcon wings to do punches and stuff like that. I didn't mind that, but here he's just like an acrobat like all the rest of these guys. He is also like really tough, and they talk about this a lot with the Super Soldier thing, because this was part of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Fatwist, as we will call it from here on out. Like, he did not take the Super Soldier serum. Sam didn't want to do that because he wanted to just be a guy, and I respect that, and I think that is an interesting choice for a character like this to make. However, things are happening to him in this movie that you're like, that's something that happens to someone that took the Super Soldier serum. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to happen to him, but I'm saying if the defining thing about him was that he did not do that, then you would figure we would need more consequences. Things should be much harder for him than they are. At this point, just take the Super Soldier serum, dude. There's not really that many downsides, as long as you know it's a good one, not one of the ones that's gonna like turn your skull red. But anyway, I think Anthony Mackie is fine in these. I think he has a lot on his shoulders, and I think he sells the emotion, like the seriousness of this character. It's interesting how he has switched from being the Falcon, the kind of jokey sidekick to Captain America, to Captain America, the more serious one, and he got his own jokey sidekick in Joaquin Torres. I like that character a lot. I think this character was fun. He brought a nice energy to this team. He's played by an actor named Daniel Ramirez. I would say Joaquin Torres in these feels like he's in his mid-20s, and Falcon's in his mid-30s maybe. In the comics, I don't know how old Falcon's supposed to be, or like Captain America. I'm just gonna, this is gonna be tough. Okay, Sam Wilson in these movies is like mid-30s, right? Mid to late 30s. Sam Wilson in the comics, I would say, is one of those characters that's like always 30, kind of like Cyclops. Joaquin Torres in the comics is like 17. He's very young, and he brings a very childish kind of optimism, but also kind of dopiness that I think makes him fun. I do think they got most of that here, and I also liked his suit. Like, it's tough, because in the comics, this guy is just a full-on mutate, and instead of being given the wing jetpack thing, he gets his DNA spliced with Red Wing, Sam's Falcon-like friend, who he has like a psychic link to, and becomes like a bird person. So there's a lot of differences there. But considering what they kind of do in the MCU, turning a lot of this into a more grounded version of itself, like, sure, that's the logical way you're going to do Falcon 2 in this universe, the Joaquin Torres version. So those are your two leads, right? And then on the other side, you got Harrison Ford playing General Ross. I think a good performance. I think Harrison Ford is really good at playing a guy who is just so tired of all of this bullshit. And that's the vibe he has here, where he's really excited about this new metal, and then everything goes wrong, and he's just frustrated for the rest of the movie, and also just like very lonely and sad. Yeah, like, I liked him. I think he was fine. I think the CGI that they do when he does Hulk out, because that's what this character does, looks great. Like, really, really, really good. I think you can tell that's where a lot of the money went, but like, those shots were very cool. I'm sure I'm gonna put some on screen because so many of them are in the trailer. The scene where it's like roaring and the smoke's clearing, very cool. And then speaking of characters, there's the other, I would say, lead in this movie, which is supposed to be Sabra, a character who in this version of the movie is just kind of called Ruth. This was an Israeli superhero. They weren't quite the Israeli Captain America, but they kind of were. And that was a big deal at the time. when this character was introduced in, say it with me, we'll get back to this a lot, a Hulk book, because this movie is a Hulk movie. But Sabra is a character that was introduced there. I'm pretty sure she was a mutant, but like the Israeli identity, big part of the character's history. Obviously, after everything that's been going on with Israel and Gaza, they don't want to do an Israeli nationalist character. I think that is smart. So they give a slightly more generic backstory. They reworked some things, I'm sure, some plot points. But either way, I cannot for the life of me figure out why. Because this character doesn't do anything particularly interesting. I don't think the performance is anything terribly fun. And there's another character in this movie that I was a little bit more excited to see because, first of all, like, I didn't know this, but when there were rumors of who this character was, it seemed like it might be a romantic relationship for Sam, which like I'm into. The MCU a lot of the time doesn't really do that anymore. And like that would be something that would maybe make this character interesting, you know? What's it like for Falcon to have a girlfriend or whatever, a boyfriend, whatever? And the way that character is positioned, it's like, why isn't that what this other character? Why aren't they one character? And then if you had to pick one of the two people for that character to be, it would obviously be the American, right? Considering what this character's job is. I don't know. All I'm saying is anybody who like boycotted the movie or whatever for Israel, Palestine stuff, totally fine. Like, and obviously you don't need me to tell you it's fine. But like for all of the trouble this must have been worth on Marvel's side, it is not worth it. Considering this character, besides not really having anything interesting to do, is incredibly not memorable or cool. I don't know what the thought process was here. And again, I understand why you want a character doing this. And especially you would want a woman in this movie, because so far everybody I've named except for the other character who's maybe Sam's love interest, like they're all men, so you want a woman in the movie just to shake things up a little bit, right? But then like why she has to be Sabra, I just don't get it. I'll explain more in the spoiler video because I have a lot of questions about her. There were a bunch of other characters in the movie, a lot of minor ones. There were also a lot of people that got cut, apparently, and we'll talk about that in spoilers too. And see, the only other named character that I feel okay talking, well, there's two. Okay, first one, you got Carl Lumbly playing Isaiah Bradley again. Very good. This is the hook for me that kind of worked. And this is something that is very available in all the trailers. He is the character that assassinates or attempts to assassinate President Ross, but he's clearly under some sort of mind control. And a lot of the stakes of the movie are we have to exonerate Isaiah. And you're like, oh yeah, I hope they do that. But because of that, he's just not in the movie very much, but it's fine. It was a good performance. I thought it was fine. Giancarlo Esposito plays a character that is Sidewinder, the leader of the Serpent Society. Now in Marvel Comics, the Serpent Society is a group of snake-themed villains who do crimes together, and each of them has a different snake like gimmick in terms of like a power or whatever, and they are themed after a different species of snake. I don't know who at Marvel hates the Serpent Society so much that they refuse to let them be the Serpent Society, but just like turning this very funky snake organization into Giancarlo Esposito with a bunch of knives is not interesting. I think Giancarlo Esposito is great, and I would love to see him in more of these. I don't think this role is particularly worthy of his talents. He seems to have had fun with it, and he seems to have been excited to be part of it. I hope he got a nice big paycheck, and maybe they have plans for him later, but like, I don't know, man. He could have played anything. Giancarlo Esposito, I think, could have been Professor Xavier if he wanted to. Could have been Dr. Doom. Like, obviously, he's not Romani, but like, in terms of the fact that they're just hiring, you know, Robert Downey Jr., Giancarlo Esposito would be great for that. So it feels weird that he was used here, considering this character does nothing. Especially considering, like, in interviews, Giancarlo Esposito has said, like, I want to play characters that aren't bad guys, that aren't, like, just villains who monologue and stuff. And maybe part of what he wanted was, like, more of an action role where he's, like, shooting guns and stuff. But I kind of thought that just meant, like, I want to be more nuanced, compassionate characters. So, I don't know, maybe there's still room for it. This feels like one of those roles that in a couple of years, he'll be on listicles of like, did you remember he was in Captain America Brave New World? Everything else, score, fine. Editing, great. It's a very well-edited movie. Give the editor some sort of Oscar. There should be an editing Oscar that is kind of more geared towards like, put together a movie of a billion reshoots. And you're like, that guy deserves a fucking medal for making this movie look as coherent as it does. Because honestly, considering I've watched Craven and Madam Web and all these movies where there's a bazillion lines of ADR and we're always looking at the back of characters' heads, I was a little bit on the lookout, like, are we going to have just, you know, scenes where characters don't move their mouths and we're going to go, oh, this is the reshot thing? There was a little bit of that, but not very much. It was much cleaner than I expected. A couple small things. I think Anthony Mackie in an interview said that Kendrick Lamar wrote the song for this or something. I can't... I'm going to double check this. I only bring this up because the song that they chose for the end of this movie is a Kendrick Lamar song, but it's not for this. In fact, it's a kind of older Kendrick Lamar song, but actually no, because Anthony Mackie said in an interview, Kendrick did the title song for my movie. Hope that's not supposed to be a surprise. But he didn't though, right? So what was that? Was there a new Kendrick song or not? Did Anthony Mackie, did you potentially tell us some tales out of school and maybe get on Kendrick's bad side? Because that is not good. You don't want to do that, buddy. Other things, no Marvel fanfare in this. What the hell? Marvel. I really love the fanfare. I think it is quite fun. It is a nice little moment. And not just oh, this is reminding me of other stuff, but just we're settling down. Here we go, baby. We're starting. You created that. It is iconic. It is very valuable in terms of just a branding thing. But for whatever reason, we just get Marvel Studios logo and then Brave New World. The editing for the beginning of the movie is very similar to the editing of one of the more recent trailers, where it's a lot of blacks and whites and blacks and whites and big words and stuff. But yeah, Marvel Studios is just one of those, but we don't do the fanfare. Do the fanfare next time. I love the fanfare. I'll say the villain in the movie is bad, but not in a way that's really terrible, because he's not really the villain. He's just kind of making the plot happen. But I do think that happy to see him. Nice that he's here. What else? Okay, we've talked about the editing. Great. Humor, writing, and stuff like that. Cute. The same usual shtick. Very similar to Fatwist, where characters will make jokes at each other's expense. Hey grandpa, you know how to use that cell phone? I used cell phones back when I was your age, and we called them payphones. I don't know. That's not what it is. But stuff like that. In terms of other cameos, I don't know. There were none that blew my mind. And none that I hadn't seen rumored before, but that's only because I've heard everything rumored for this movie. And it's one of the only cases where I'm they probably were all on the table at some point, because certain ones just definitely got cut. Let's talk about the costumes. I didn't really like the costume from the end of Fatwist. Not because I didn't think it was a good costume, because I think it's actually very faithful to the comics. I thought his neck looked dumb and it looked hard to wear. And I've heard him say more or less that in interviews. Anthony Mackie said, you can't turn your head. I knew the moment I put this on, this is not going to fly. I think his new costume, that is the one that this is, looks great. I think it looks great in the movie. I love the color. I love the blue. It's a very bold blue, but I also like, the arms. I like the short sleeves. I think that's a cool look. Overall, I just think that was great. Joaquin Torres' costume is fine. Sabra costume is weird. There's no good reason why she's wearing it the one time she's wearing it, but screw it. We needed to give her something for her McDonald's toy, which luckily that exists, and there has never been a bigger gulf in terms of what the McDonald's toys had versus who was actually in the movie, considering one of them just got cut with no Diamondback, so don't get excited about that. There's all kinds of stuff, man. I don't know. This movie's fine. It's fine. If you see it and you go I know what I'm getting myself into, you'll probably have a good time. It is not going to ruin your day. And if you've seen the trailers, just know it's mostly that. There's some things that aren't in the trailers. There's plenty of other little scenes here and there, but nothing about this movie is going to shock you or surprise you if you've seen the trailers. This will not win any new Marvel fans, I don't think. It's not like Guardians or Agatha, where they're so good that they're going to transcend and you're going to tell people, listen, I know you don't watch these, but watch that. That one's fun. But I don't think this is just for the fans either. I think this is just for everybody. The same way that, like I said, a Bad Boys movie or a Fast and Furious movie is kind of for everybody. It is a traditional summer blockbuster. I have much higher hopes for Thunderbolts in terms of being something that is able to be more than the sum of its parts. I think this is the sum of its parts. There are a lot of parts. They all show up on screen in an order and do sum up into this, but it does not transcend in any way. So I'm going to do another video where I just talk spoiler stuff. I just ask some questions, things that are pretty specific that would not make sense here. But, I don't know, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 maybe. It's fine. Watch it in theaters or don't. Honestly, considering how messy this was, I'm surprised at how coherent it was. But you know what? You should not be surprised by how coherent it is. This video's sponsor, Nebula. If you've never heard of it before, Nebula is a subscription streaming service that me and a bunch of other YouTubers, a lot of people you're probably already watching, created because we wanted to have more control over our videos. We didn't want to have to cater to the algorithm, and we wanted to offer a better experience to you guys so you can watch all of my videos. They're all early. Some of them are a full month early. Some of them are like a day early, but every video goes up first on Nebula, and that is Nando V Movies, and that is the Nando Cut, both of my channels, and they're completely ad-free. So there's no ads in the middle, and there's no sponsor read at the end. And in 2025, we have so much cool stuff that we are working on. One thing that I am very excited about is a show called Abolish Everything. This is a live show that happens in the city where people come in and bring something that they hate, and they give a short presentation on why it should be abolished. Then a panel of experts goes in and questions them. And I'm excited for Abolish Everything because, like Nebula, we have a reputation for being very smart. We have a lot of very, very educated people who do research and make documentaries, but we also have a lot of really funny people, and I am excited to see that side of Nebula growing. And I always say, a year of Nebula is a steal at $5 a month or $60 a year. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for $3 a month. It is an incredible deal. Go check it out. You're going to love it. So thank you everybody for watching. Spoiler video will be out soon. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.